A man mocked a young girl, claiming no black woman could serve in elite military units. The child remained motionless, tears forming in her eyes, until the entrance doors parted and her mother emerged wearing military dress. Amaya Richardson had no intention of impressing anyone that day. At 12 years old, she found herself in the footwear section of Dick's Sporting Goods at South Park Mall in Charlotte, conversing with her closest friend about academics, shoes, and her strong desire for new Nike sneakers. Her tone remained casual until, as children sometimes do, she mentioned something that drew attention from nearby shoppers. "My mom can't get me until she finishes at Fort Bragg," Amaya said, closing a showbox lid. "She serves in special forces, which means her timing can be unpredictable." Her friend's eyes widened in surprise. "Hold on, your mother's military? Like, actually in combat?" "Yes," Amaya replied with the same natural ease she used when discussing her preferred breakfast cereal. "She's Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson. She recently returned from an overseas deployment." This should have been just another casual boast that kids share. However, that's when harsh laughter pierced the atmosphere. It wasn't gentle amusement but rather sharp and condescending, designed to diminish someone's spirit. Several feet away, browsing through Under Armour sweatshirts, stood Officer Colton Reeves. Off-duty, wearing denim and a Carolina Panthers shirt with his badge attached to his belt like jewelry, he appeared more like a casual shopper than law enforcement. Yet the laughter belonged to him, loud enough to catch other customers' attention. "Special Forces," Reeves declared, shaking his head while grinning. "Come on, child. I've worked in law enforcement for 2 decades, and I can assure you there's no possibility your mother operates with the Green Berets. Particularly not," he paused, his eyes narrowing, "especially not someone of her background." The word stung, but the tone hurt even more. Amaya's face reddened as her lips formed a tight line. Around her, people had turned to observe. A mother pushing a toddler in her cart lingered nearby, pretending to organize socks while obviously listening. 2 teenagers whispered behind their palms. Amaya's friend moved closer, speaking quietly. "Just pay him no mind. He's ignorant." But ignoring wasn't possible. The officer wasn't done. Reeves chuckled once more and continued, "Listen, I understand. Children enjoy creating fantasies. My son used to claim his father was Spider-Man. It's the same concept. Endearing, but not reality." Embarrassment crawled up Amaya's neck like heat. She wanted to defend her mother, but words stuck in her throat. Her hands shook as she pushed the showbox back onto the display, cardboard scraping loudly against the rack. "Why would you make such comments in front of everyone?" her friend whispered anxiously. Amaya swallowed with difficulty. "Because it's the truth." That quiet but firm defiance drew more laughter from Reeves. He angled his head, addressing the small group of strangers now pretending to shop. "See, that's exactly what I mean. Sweet child living in make-believe. Look, dear, there's nothing inappropriate about wanting your mother to be heroic, but you shouldn't create fictional stories." Fictional stories. The phrase hit like a physical blow. Amaya's mother wasn't make-believe. She was real flesh and blood, tougher than anyone Amaya knew. A woman who had tucked her into bed one week and traveled across the globe the next. But standing there beneath the bright lights of a retail store, Amaya couldn't provide proof. And Reeves understood this. His smug expression told her he believed he'd triumphed. "I'll tell you what," he said, tapping his badge. "If your mother truly serves in special forces, perhaps she should visit the police station sometime. We could enjoy a good laugh." Amaya's chest constricted. She thought about her mother's rough hands, the rows of medals displayed in their home, how she moved through airports with a commanding presence that made strangers step away. Her mother had put her life at risk countless times. Yet here was this man destroying it all with a smirk before an audience. Her voice broke when she finally managed to respond. "You know nothing about her." That statement lingered in the air. Reeves's smile wavered briefly, but he quickly recovered, clapping his hands as if the matter was resolved. "Sure, child. Whatever you believe." Around them, shoppers exchanged glances, some amused, others uncomfortable. But nobody intervened. Nobody declared, "She's speaking the truth." The silence only amplified Amaya's humiliation. Her friend shifted nervously. "Amaya, perhaps we should wait outside." But Amaya couldn't budge. Her sneakers felt glued to the linoleum flooring. This wasn't simply about embarrassment. It concerned her mother, her reality, her dignity, and watching it mocked before strangers made her chest burn. Still, she lowered her gaze to the floor tiles because what could she really accomplish? She was merely a child. But what Amaya didn't realize was that the instant she wished for her mother to appear, Nicole Richardson was already approaching, walking through the sliding glass entrance of the mall in complete uniform. The sporting goods store felt more cramped now. Every corner seemed filled with staring eyes, all focused on Amaya. She shifted her stance, wrapping her arms around herself, but nothing provided comfort. The officer's voice carried effortlessly, echoing off shelves packed with backpacks and clothing racks. Officer Colton Reeves leaned against the display as if he possessed unlimited time, like this was entertainment. "You understand," he said with that half-smile resembling a sneer, "people don't grasp the type of preparation required to join special forces. Years of brutal training, combat assignments, the elite of the elite. It's not the kind of career you discuss at parent-teacher conferences." He laughed again, shaking his head. "And you want me to accept that your mother is among them?" The words twisted in Amaya's chest like a knot. She wished she could explain, wished she could describe the times her mother had been absent for months. The letters she wrote in pencil because phones weren't always secure to use. But she couldn't. Not with him staring her down. Not with strangers circling like they anticipated a performance. Her friend Kaylin Torres glanced nervously at the other customers. "We should leave," she whispered again. But Amaya refused. Her throat tightened, but she pushed the words out. "I don't need your belief. My mother doesn't require your validation." That response should have concluded things, but Reeves wasn't the type of man who allowed a child the final word. He stepped nearer, dropping his voice just enough to make it feel personal, yet still audible for others to hear. "Listen, sweetheart. I understand you want to feel pride, but inventing tales isn't the solution. People will mock you. And frankly, a little girl like you doesn't comprehend what genuine sacrifice means." Amaya's ears burned. The tears she refused to release blurred the shelves before her. Kaylin placed a hand on her sleeve, but Amaya pulled away, fists clenched at her sides. From across the aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered quietly, "Just let the kid speak, man." His voice wasn't strong enough to carry. And Reeves ignored it. Amaya swallowed and spoke up again, her words trembling but steady enough to be heard. "You're mistaken about her. You're wrong about everything." That earned another laugh from Reeves. But this one wasn't just amusement. It was the laugh of someone convinced they'd already won. He looked around the store, almost inviting others to share the joke. "Wrong, child. I've worked alongside real heroes. I've encountered soldiers. I've met the men who actually go overseas, handle the dangerous missions. And trust me, they don't resemble your mother." The final sentence landed heavier than anything else he'd said. Amaya froze, her face hot with shame and fury. She knew exactly what he implied, and so did everyone listening. Kaylin gasped. "That's unfair," she blurted. "You don't even know her." Reeves turned his attention to her, his grin widening. "And you do?" he said. "What? Did you two sit around sharing war stories? Please. I've worn a uniform longer than you two have existed. I think I can distinguish between reality and fiction." Kaylin retreated, but Amaya held her ground, though her hands trembled. "You'll see. She's coming." The officer smirked. "Certainly she is. Maybe she'll parachute through the ceiling, right?" He chuckled, shaking his head as if the joke was too good to resist. "Don't worry, child. You'll understand. The world's harsh. Better to confront reality now than continue living in fantasy." Shoppers murmured, some shaking their heads, others quietly retrieving phones, recording the scene. Amaya noticed a woman pretending to browse yoga pants, her phone angled slightly toward them. A teenage boy near checkout nudged his friend, pointing. The humiliation pressed on her like a heavy burden. For the first time, Amaya wished she hadn't spoken at all. Perhaps she should have remained silent, kept her mother's career private as Nicole often requested. But the thought of Reeves smirking, of everyone believing his narrative instead of hers, made her chest burn. She wiped her eyes quickly with her hands back and stood taller. "You'll see," she repeated more firmly this time. The officer leaned back against the hoodie rack, crossing his arms like he'd just solved the case. "We'll see, huh?" he said with a smirk. "All right, then. I'll wait." The silence following his words was louder than the music playing through the store's speakers. Every second stretched, the crowd restless but curious. Some waited to see if Amaya would break, if she'd shrink away in shame. She didn't. But while Amaya stood there, fighting not to cry, her mother was already walking past the food court, her boots striking the tile floor with each step, about to turn the corner and change everything. Amaya's heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She remained planted before the sneaker shelves, but her inside screamed for her to flee. She wanted to vanish, wanted to rewind the moment she'd opened her mouth. If she had simply said, "My mom's occupied," none of this would have occurred. Now strangers stared at her like she was the star of a show she never volunteered for. Officer Colton Reeves stood like he was enjoying a leisurely afternoon comedy. He rocked back on his heels, arms crossed, his smirk fixed in place. "You're remarkably quiet now," he said, starting to realize you might have embellished the truth slightly. The word stabbed. Amaya kept her eyes down, but his voice dragged her back up each time. She could almost hear the whispers circling. "Why is he targeting her like that?" someone muttered from several aisles over. "Maybe the kid really did fabricate it," another voice responded, low, but not low enough. Kaylin tugged at her sleeve again. "Amaya, please. Let's just wait for your mother outside. You don't need to keep engaging with him." But Amaya's chest burned. She wasn't certain if it was anger or shame or both. "I'm not fabricating," she whispered mostly to herself. Reeves leaned closer, his voice a notch lower now. "Look, I'm trying to spare you from yourself. You go around telling tales like this, and people will mock you. Not everyone will be kind about it. You're better off sticking to facts. Your mother works hard. She cares for you. That's sufficient. No need to pretend she's some kind of war hero." Her fingernails dug into her palms. Pretend. That word echoed in her head. Pretend. As if the nights she cried into her pillow because she missed her mother were imaginary. As if the medals in the shadow box on their wall were souvenirs from a gift shop. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not because she questioned her mother, but because she questioned herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken so casually. Maybe it was her fault strangers now thought her mother's life was a joke. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it stung. Kaylin whispered, "He doesn't matter. You know what's true." But it didn't feel that way. Truth didn't matter when no one believed you. Reeves shifted his weight, glancing around the store like he had an audience to entertain. "I'll tell you what," he said, almost chuckling. "If your mother walks in here wearing uniform, I'll purchase those sneakers myself." He gestured toward the shoe wall. "But until then, maybe keep the fairy tales at home." Fairy tales again. Her vision blurred, but she refused to blink. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby holding a basket of clearance shirts finally spoke. "She's just a child," she said firmly. Reeves turned his head slowly, locking eyes with the woman. "And I'm just telling her the truth. Better she hears it now than continues embarrassing herself." The woman frowned, but looked away, shaking her head. No one else said a word. Amaya's stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to stand and watch instead of saying she was right? Her mother always told her, "Courage isn't loud, Amaya. Sometimes it's just standing tall when you want to shrink." But standing tall felt impossible when the floor itself seemed to push her down. She pressed her lips together until they hurt. "You'll see," she whispered again, her voice trembling. Reeves sighed as if bored now. "Child, I've heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Believe me, I've heard every story, and each time it's the same thing. Kids wanting to feel special. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth doesn't need defending." His words dug deep. Because wasn't that exactly what she was doing? Defending? If the truth was so obvious, why did she feel like she was losing? Kaylin stepped between them, her small frame almost shaking. "You're being cruel," she said. "She's not lying." Reeves arched a brow. "And how do you know?" "Because I've seen photographs," Kaylin snapped. "Her mother's in uniform. She has medals." She stopped, realizing the word sounded thin against his disbelief. Reeves chuckled under his breath. "Photographs? Anyone can purchase a uniform at an army surplus store. Doesn't make it authentic." Amaya clenched her jaw. She hated that he had an answer for everything. Hated that every word he spoke made the crowd lean a little closer, like he was telling the version that made sense. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straighter. "You'll see," she repeated for the third time, the words coming out stronger this time. Reeves tilted his head, smiling like a man indulging a child. "All right, I'm waiting." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were just watching. The air thickened with expectation, every second dragging like an hour. Amaya could barely breathe, her thoughts racing, her palms slick with sweat. And then, just faintly, she heard it. The sound of boots against tile, steady and certain. But what Amaya didn't realize yet was that her mother's arrival wouldn't just end the laughter. It would flip the entire store on its head. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance hissed open, letting in a burst of chatter and footsteps from the food court. Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson strode through with a posture that turned heads without her saying a word. Her camouflage uniform was crisp, the patches on her sleeve catching the overhead light, her beret tucked neatly under one arm. She'd just left a ceremony at Fort Bragg and had decided to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She hadn't expected to walk into a crowd. From across the store, Amaya spotted her instantly. Relief surged through her chest so quickly it almost knocked her breath away. Her heart leapt, but so did her fear, because now her mother was about to see everything. Nicole's boots hit the polished tile in a rhythm that didn't waver. Her gaze scanned the racks of athletic wear, the line of shoppers, then stopped on the small cluster gathered near the sneaker aisle. Her daughter, face flushed, fists balled at her sides. Beside her, Kaylin looking both scared and protective. And standing across from them, Officer Reeves leaning back like he owned the space. Nicole's jaw set. She crossed the aisle, her uniform drawing eyes as shoppers instinctively stepped aside. Amaya's throat went dry. She wanted to run into her mother's arms, but something about the way Nicole moved, focused, purposeful, made her stay frozen. Reeves spotted her, too. At first, his grin didn't fade. He assumed she was just another parent arriving to pick up her child. But as Nicole came closer, her rank insignia was impossible to miss. His smirk faltered for half a second before he caught himself. "Mom?" Amaya's voice cracked louder than she meant, but the relief in it silenced even the shoppers who'd been whispering. Nicole stopped beside her daughter, her hand resting lightly on Amaya's shoulder. The tension in Amaya's body melted just a little under the touch. "What's happening?" Nicole asked, her voice calm but carrying. Reeves straightened, shifting his weight, then forced a polite smile. "Evening, just clearing up a misunderstanding." Nicole's eyes flicked from Reeves to the circle of strangers, then back to her daughter. Amaya's lips trembled. He said you couldn't be who you are. That I fabricated it." The words tumbled out, half shame, half desperation. Nicole didn't respond immediately. She simply studied Reeves, the silence stretching just long enough for him to feel it. Reeves gave a chuckle that sounded more nervous this time. "Children, you know how they are. Big imaginations. I was just having a little fun with her." Nicole's voice stayed even, but it cut clean. "You mocked my daughter in front of strangers and called her a liar." The man's shoulders stiffened. "Now hold on. I didn't call her that. I just said she stretched the truth," Nicole interrupted. "And you decided it was a joke. Tell me, officer, what exactly made it so amusing?" The title, officer, was deliberate. Reeves's face tightened. A couple of the shoppers glanced at one another, surprised she knew. The badge on his belt glinted under the lights. He cleared his throat. "Look, Sergeant Major, with all due respect." Nicole raised a hand slightly. "Respect doesn't begin with laughter at a child." The store had gone silent. Even the music overhead seemed quieter, as if the air itself paused to listen. Amaya stood taller now, the weight of humiliation lifting as her mother's presence filled the space. Kaylin's eyes widened, almost in awe. Reeves shifted again, the confidence draining by degrees. "I didn't mean anything by it. Just thought it was unusual, that's all." Nicole tilted her head. "Unusual doesn't mean impossible. It means you've never seen it. And maybe the problem is less about me being here and more about you never imagining I could be." Her voice wasn't raised, but the words struck harder than any shout. Amaya looked up at her mother, pride swelling inside her chest. She wanted Reeves to say something now. She wanted him to try. But he didn't. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again, his smirk finally gone. The woman with the clearance basket whispered to the person beside her, "She's the real thing." The teenage boy at the checkout muttered, "No way. That's legit." And Amaya, for the first time that afternoon, breathed without feeling like the whole world was against her. Nicole squeezed her daughter's shoulder lightly before turning back to Reeves. "Next time, before you laugh at a child, remember that truth doesn't need your permission to exist." Reeves's throat bobbed. He gave a stiff nod, his earlier bravado scattered like dust. But what Reeves didn't realize was that the confrontation had only just begun. Nicole wasn't finished making her point. The atmosphere in the store felt heavy now. Nobody spoke. Nobody shuffled racks or pretended to browse. Every shopper within earshot had turned toward the sneaker aisle, their eyes bouncing between the officer's stiff stance and the uniformed woman standing firm beside her daughter. Nicole didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Authority carried in her posture, in the steady way she met Reeves's eyes. "Officer Reeves," she said evenly, glancing at his badge. "I don't know you. You don't know me. Yet you saw fit to laugh at my daughter, to dismiss her in front of strangers. Why?" Reeves licked his lips. The confidence he'd worn so easily minutes ago was slipping. "Look, Sergeant Major, I wasn't trying to answer the question." Her tone sharpened, but only slightly. Why mock a child who spoke the truth? He shifted his weight, trying to pull back some control. "It wasn't like that. I just thought she was exaggerating. Kids do that." Nicole studied him, her gaze unblinking. "Exaggerating is saying, your mom makes the best cookies in the world. Exaggerating is telling your friends you can run faster than a car. My daughter didn't exaggerate. She told you who I am, and instead of listening, you laughed." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. The woman with the clearance basket set it down, her arms crossed now, clearly invested. Reeves forced out a laugh, but it sounded thin. "All right, maybe I shouldn't have laughed. But you've got to understand, it caught me off guard. I mean, Special Forces." Nicole cut in again. "What about Special Forces caught you off guard? That my daughter knows the term, or that she used it to describe me?" He hesitated. That pause spoke louder than anything else. Nicole leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to force him closer if he wanted to hear. "You assumed, because I'm a woman, because I'm black, you couldn't imagine someone like me holding that title. So you mocked my daughter to protect your own assumptions." Reeves swallowed hard. His eyes darted to the onlookers, realizing he wasn't just answering her, he was answering everyone. Kaylin stepped closer to Amaya, whispering, "He looks nervous." Amaya whispered back, "Good." Reeves drew in a slow breath, trying to find footing. "I never said anything about race. I never said anything about women. You're putting words in my mouth." Nicole straightened, her expression calm. "You didn't have to say it. Your laugh said it for you." A few people in the crowd nodded faintly. A man near the registers muttered, "She's right." Reeves's jaw flexed, his smirk gone completely now. "Fine, maybe I came across wrong. I'll admit that. But I didn't mean harm." Nicole glanced down at Amaya, then back at him. Intent doesn't erase impact. She stood here while a grown man with a badge turned her truth into entertainment. "Do you have any idea how small that can make a child feel?" Amaya felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was from pride. Her mother was saying everything she couldn't. The silence stretched again. The officer shifted his weight, clearly aware of every phone camera angled his way now. Nicole let the pause hang before continuing. "I've served my country for 22 years. I've led soldiers through terrain you'll never see. Made decisions that carried life and death. I wear this uniform because I earned it. Every stripe, every insignia. And yet, the hardest battle I fight is here, convincing people like you that my existence is not a joke." The words hit like steel wrapped in velvet. Reeves's face reddened. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. His arguments dried up. Nicole turned slightly, addressing not just him, but the entire store. "This isn't about me alone. It's about what happens when someone decides their assumptions matter more than the truth. My daughter shouldn't have to defend my career to strangers. She shouldn't have to stand here in tears because a man couldn't imagine her words being real." A quiet clap broke the silence. The woman with the clearance basket started it, then stopped, embarrassed, but the gesture had already left its mark. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, his bravado long gone. "All right, point taken." Nicole studied him one last time, then spoke quietly enough that only he and Amaya could clearly hear. "Next time, remember that respect costs you nothing, but its absence costs others everything." Amaya looked up at her mother, her chest swelling with a pride that pushed out the shame she'd carried. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she felt steady again. But even as Reeves tried to retreat, the eyes of the crowd weren't finished with him. They wanted more than an uneasy apology. And Nicole wasn't done teaching the lesson. Officer Reeves shifted uncomfortably, his arms crossing over his chest like he wanted to fold in on himself. The crowd wasn't dispersing. If anything, it was growing. People from other aisles drifted closer, drawn by the tension, by the sight of a decorated soldier standing toe-to-toe with a police officer who had started something he could no longer control. Nicole didn't move. She held her ground, one hand resting on Amaya's shoulder, her presence steady as a stone. The contrast was stark, Reeves fidgeting, Nicole calm, composed, unyielding. "You think this is done," she said softly. "But it isn't. Not until you understand what you did here. Reeves forced out a weak laugh, hoping to mask his discomfort. Look, Sergeant Major, I said I was wrong. What else do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry if I embarrassed your kid. That good enough? The apology was hollow, thrown out like spare change. A few people in the crowd murmured disapproval. Nicole's eyes never wavered. No, because that wasn't an apology. That was you trying to save face. Reeves's jaw worked, but nothing came out. Nicole continued, her tone still calm, but sharper now. An apology is not about you. It's about the person you harmed. My daughter stood here while you laughed at her. She believed in me so much that she proudly told the truth, and you crushed it under your heel. If you want to apologize, you look at her, not at me. The weight of the moment pressed down on Reeves. He glanced at Amaya, who stared back at him, her lips pressed tight, eyes wet but unflinching. The officer shifted again, clearly uncomfortable with the silence that demanded more from him. Finally, he muttered, "Sorry, kid." Nicole arched a brow. "Try again." This time, the murmur of agreement from the crowd was louder. Reeves's face flushed red. His shoulders sagged under the gaze of strangers who expected him to rise to the moment. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. "Amaya, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed at you. I shouldn't have said what I said. You told the truth, and I didn't believe you. That was wrong." Amaya's chest swelled. For once, she didn't feel like shrinking. She held his gaze for a second longer, then looked up at her mother. Nicole gave the slightest nod, a gesture of reassurance. Reeves exhaled as if hoping that would end things, but Nicole wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying clearly. "This isn't about one man and one child. This is about how easy it is to dismiss someone when their story doesn't match what you expect. My daughter's truth was simple, but instead of listening, it was easier to assume she was lying. How many times does that happen? How many times do kids grow up thinking their voices don't matter because someone with power decided to laugh instead of listen?" The words landed like stone on water, rippling through the group of shoppers. Heads nodded. Some looked uncomfortable, not because Nicole was wrong, but because they recognized how many times they'd seen something similar and stayed silent. Kaylin squeezed Amaya's hand, whispering, "She's amazing." Nicole looked down at her daughter. "Amaya, you never have to be ashamed of telling the truth. Not when it's about me. Not about anything. If someone can't handle it, that's their weakness, not yours." Tears threatened at the corners of Amaya's eyes. But this time, they weren't from humiliation. They were from relief, from vindication, from pride. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, clearly wanting the ground to swallow him. He muttered, "I already said I was sorry." Nicole looked at him one last time. "Then live like it. Next time you meet a child with pride in their voice, don't strip it away. Let them keep it. Because once you take that from a kid, it's not so easily given back." The silence that followed was thick. Then, almost unexpectedly, a young man near the checkout counter clapped once. Another joined. Within seconds, scattered applause filled the store. Not loud, not rowdy, but steady and supportive. Reeves's face burned crimson. He gave a curt nod and stepped back, retreating toward the exit, no longer the center of attention, but the man who'd been schooled in front of strangers. Amaya turned to her mother, her voice small but steady. "Thank you." Nicole bent down slightly so her face was level with her daughter's. "No, Amaya. Thank you for telling the truth when it wasn't easy. That's braver than anything I've ever done in uniform." The words sank deep, settling in Amaya's heart like armor. For the first time that day, she believed it. But as the crowd slowly dispersed, Amaya realized something else. The lesson wasn't just for Reeves. It was for everyone watching, including her. The store began to quiet again, though the air still buzzed with what had just taken place. A few shoppers lingered, pretending to look at shelves, but sneaking glances at Nicole and her daughter. Some whispered to each other, their tones hushed but respectful now. The tension that had filled the space was gone, replaced with something heavier, something thoughtful. Amaya stood taller beside her mother, still holding Kaylin's hand. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. The shame that had burned her cheeks only minutes earlier had dissolved into pride. Nicole glanced down at her. "You all right?" Amaya nodded. "Yeah, I hate that it happened." Nicole's hand rested on her daughter's shoulder. "I know. But sometimes moments like this teach us more than 100 quiet days ever could. You don't forget them, and neither does anyone who watched." Kaylin looked up at Nicole, her eyes wide. You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you. Nicole gave a small smile. I wasn't just talking to him. I was talking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth doesn't matter. A man in a baseball cap, the same one who had muttered earlier, finally spoke up louder. Thank you. I've got a daughter myself. She's 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage. Nicole nodded once, the simple gesture carrying weight. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about speaking anyway. Amaya's chest swelled. Hearing those words said in front of strangers made her feel like her mother's pride in her was carved into the air. As the shoppers began to drift away, a woman paused near Nicole. She lowered her voice but spoke clearly enough for Amaya to hear. Thank you for your service, and thank you for showing him he was wrong. Nicole's gaze softened. We all serve in our own ways. Today, my daughter served by standing tall. That's something worth respecting. The woman smiled and walked off, leaving Nicole and Amaya standing by the sneakers that suddenly didn't seem so important anymore. Amaya turned to her mother. Did I make it worse by saying it? Nicole shook her head. You made it better. You didn't hide who I am. You spoke the truth even when people laughed. That takes more strength than some adults ever learn. For a moment, Amaya felt the weight of what had happened lift off her. She could breathe again. Kaylin gave her a quick squeeze. Told you he was wrong. Amaya laughed softly, wiping her eyes. Yeah, you did. They walked toward the exit together, Nicole's boots steady against the tile. People still glanced at them, but not with ridicule now, with something closer to admiration. As they stepped out into the wider mall, Amaya's mind replayed the scene. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of doubt, and then her mother's voice, clear and strong, cutting through all of it. She realized that even though it had been one of the hardest moments of her young life, it had also been one of the most important. Nicole slowed her pace and bent slightly toward her daughter. Amaya, remember this. People will doubt you. They'll laugh, dismiss you, try to make you smaller. But you never let them take your truth. Not for me. Not for anyone. Promise me that. Amaya looked up at her mother, eyes shining. I promise. Nicole kissed the top of her daughter's head, the simple gesture stronger than any speech. By the time they reached the car, Amaya felt lighter. She still carried the memory of Reeves's smirk, but it no longer weighed her down. Instead, it reminded her of something else, how quickly a person's assumptions can crumble when faced with the truth. And as the car doors shut and the mall disappeared behind them, Amaya leaned back against the seat, her hand still gripping Kaylin's, and thought, I'll never be embarrassed about Mom again. Because that day, in a crowded store under bright fluorescent lights, she had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Never let anyone laugh you out of your own truth. And maybe, just maybe, the people who had witnessed it learned something, too, that respect costs nothing, but withholding it can scar someone deeply. Nicole started the car, glanced in the rearview mirror, and said softly, You girls ready to head home? Amaya smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. Yeah, let's go home. The mall faded into the distance, but the lesson stayed. And for everyone who heard it, whether they admitted it out loud or not, it would linger long after the sound of Nicole's boots had faded from the tile floor. Life has a way of putting us in moments we don't expect, moments that test whether we'll stay quiet or speak up, whether we'll shrink or stand tall. If this story resonated with you, let it be a reminder. Always defend the truth, no matter who tries to silence it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe.